Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to MLS Live for our live animal presentation of snakes, skunks, and shrimp. Oh my! So it's maybe not a surprise who we'll be meeting today, but maybe you are very excited about some or all of them. We're excited that you are here tuning in this afternoon. Just a couple of things before we get started. My name is Karen. I am one of the many educators at the museum, and today I'll be acting as your moderator. This just means any of your questions, your comments, your observations, you can type them right into the Q&A box and they will come straight to me and I can share them with our Live Animal Center staff. If you do want to make a comment or ask a question, the Q&A button should be right there at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you are watching here on Facebook or YouTube Live, unfortunately, we cannot field questions or comments from those platforms. And lastly, if you are looking for closed captioning, you can click the CC button and choose Show Subtitles. So with that, I'm going to ask our Animal Center staff to come on camera and introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Corey. I'm the invertebrate keeper here at the museum. And also doing the show today is Liz, who is our assistant curator of our Live Animal Center. So you might be able to guess easily what our animals are going to be today. So we're actually going to kind of reverse our order a little bit. And we're going to do our smallest animal first. I'm going to have Liz throw on our camera. This is a aquatic cherry shrimp. So this is Boston. Boston was born in May of 2019. So he is actually, his birthday is coming up here pretty soon. So cherry shrimp are a little bit unique compared to maybe some other species of shrimp. These guys are aquarium shrimp. So they are for home aquariums and that's what they're bred for. This species in the wild, they're from Taiwan, and they normally are going to be more of a green-brown color in the wild. But it's pretty cool that when you take this shrimp and you actually breed it, you can get crazy colors. So you can get yellow, you can get blue, you can get red, all of these really amazing colors, which is pretty cool. So you kind of have to think about it like a dog. So dogs are bred for specific breeds, and that's similar to our shrimp here. So Boston, being a shrimp, is a type of crustacean. So crustaceans can be freshwater and they can be saltwater. Our shrimp Boston here is a freshwater shrimp. So he's a little bit smaller on the smaller side of things. One thing that I always love to talk about when we talk about crustaceans is eating them. So if you've ever had lobster before, or if you've ever had shrimp before, they're considered kind of a delicacy and kind of, more of an expensive item. But that's not how they originally started as food. When these guys were first started as food, people thought they were disgusting. They were invertebrates, they lived in the ocean, they were gross. So prisoners were actually fed lobster as their dinner. So as time went on, they actually became a delicacy. So in the future, I always love to tell people, in the future, you are going to be eating crickets and you're going to think it's gross now, but in the future, it's going to be a delicacy. I promise you. So shrimp are really cool. Most shrimp, what makes them different from like a lobster or a crab is their feet are really delicate. So they actually just use that for perching. So you can kind of see Boston right now is kind of getting lower. He's on those feet. He might take off and swim for us, but they use those for perching. And then their front feet, they use to eat. And then how they swim is they have what's called swimmerets on the bottom of their body. And they're really quick, agile swimmers. So these guys like to hang down on the bottom of the river or whatever body of water they're in. And they're going to be eating biofilm and algae, and they're omnivores. So pretty much any little thing, they're just going to be cleaning up. So especially if you have a home aquarium, these guys are wonderful because they are just your little cleaning crew that go around and they eat the algae in your tank and all the leftover waste. So I'm going to turn it over and see if we have any questions about our little adorable shrimp here.
Great, Corey. There's actually a bunch of questions that are coming in. One of the ones that has come up a couple of times is, what is its size? So maybe if Liz is there, she can put a hand next to it just to kind of, I don't know if she has hands sort of
Oh, yeah. So he is about the size of my pinky. So from where this kind of knuckle is all the way to the front. So he's probably about an inch. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm really bad at guessing the size of things. But he's probably close to an inch. And I also say it's a he. I'm fairly positive it's a he, but he's very large for being a male shrimp. But to tell the difference between the males and the females, we look at size, but we also look at the ovaries. So the shrimp actually carry their ovaries, what to us would be like their back, and it looks like a little saddle. So they have ovaries on either side, and that's a good way to tell. And on Boston, I just can't see those ovaries, so I'm pretty positive it's a boy.
Excellent. So it was great. You answered questions from a lot of people that wanted to know if it was a male or a female and how you tell. This one I'm interested in. How deep do they live? So, like, what parts of the oceans would you find them in?
Yeah, so shrimp are pretty amazing. You can find them almost anywhere. There are thousands of species. They are at higher levels, they are at lower levels in the ocean. They are pretty much everywhere. They're really good at adapting and evolving in their environment, which is good for them, but it's also hard on them because they are very sensitive. Shrimp molt multiple times a year. Again, depending on the species, some are different. But when they're molting, they're losing that outside exoskeleton to have a new, fresh exoskeleton. And with these guys, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily getting bigger each time that they're molting. So our cherry shrimp here actually will molt almost every 30 days. So it's pretty regular. And when they do that, they're actually really vulnerable. And so water quality is really, really important for these guys. And that's in the ocean as well. But they are pretty hardy and can be found everywhere. They're all sorts of shapes and sizes and colors. Their claws can be huge. Their claws can be little, like our Boston here. They're pretty amazing animals. And they're kind of called whiskers, are the long strands on the front of their face that they use to sense the world around them. Those also can be really small, or they can be really, really long, and they can be colorful and striped. Shrimp are super cool and come in all shapes and sizes.
Excellent. So we have so many questions, it's hard to choose, but this is an interesting one. Prisha, who is 8, noticed and asks, what is that yellow thing in the water next to Boston?
That is a great question. So that's a little biofilm. So it's kind of just a little bit of the waste that came from his enclosure. It's a little bit of leftover food. It's a mixture of those things. He does also have some food pellets in there just in case he wanted to eat. And you can actually see him if you look really closely, moving those front feet. That's him sifting through, picking particles out of the water that he is going to eat. Great observation and great question. So with fish in general, but with our shrimp here, I can't just take him out of his tank and put him in any water. It has to be water that he's adjusted to. So this is water straight from his enclosure. So that way the water parameters aren't changing and he'll be healthy and happy to come down here.
You mentioned that he might be sifting through looking for food. There's lots of questions about what do they eat, maybe both here at the museum, but also out in the wild.
Yeah, so here at the museum, let's start with in the wild. In the wild, these guys are omnivores. So their biggest thing is going to be biofilm, which is pretty much just kind of like the leftover. It's kind of like algae. It's kind of the film that you see that would be on the top of the water or kind of starting to crest over plants and rocks in their area. But pretty much any like waste that's left over. So from fish, any waste that they make, anything that dies in the water that starts to decompose, they can pick through and eat. Plant material, they'll pick off of and eat a little bit. But algae and biofilm are kind of their main food sources. Here at the museum, Boston gets a pretty well-rounded diet. He gets crab cuisine. He also gets a lobster pellet, and then he also gets algae wafers. So he doesn't get these all on the same day, but they're spread out through the week. So that way he's getting a really well-rounded diet, because it would kind of be like us if we ate chicken nuggets every day. We probably wouldn't start to feel too great. It's the same nutrients over and over again. So he also gets a very varied diet.
I always love when we think about sort of what zoo animals get fed and people are like, make that stuff? And it's like, yeah, they make shrimp food because shrimps live in captivity. Vivian actually wants to know if shrimps can be kept as pets.
They can. So a lot of shrimp can be purchased at local pet stores. They can also be purchased online from reputable companies. What makes these guys okay to have as pets is the majority of them are coming from a breeding facility. These guys are super easy to reproduce. So if you get a tiny group of them and you have males and females, I guarantee if your water parameters are good, you will have baby shrimp. These are so easy to breed. And as you can see, Boston was born here at the museum after I got shrimp in, and I had them for maybe a week, 2 weeks, and his mom already had the eggs ready to go. So they're great little aquarium pets. It's very important if you are going to get these guys, and you're going to put them in a tank that already has other fish. Make sure those fish aren't aggressive. These shrimp are just super docile animals. They will go and hide away, but if something is larger, it will eat them. But they are really wonderful, really fun animals to have as pets. But again, you got to do your research into water quality, care, food. Those are all things that with all of our animals are super important.
And I think one last one about the shrimp, because I know we have two other friends to meet, are these species of shrimp fresh or saltwater?
Great question. So these species are freshwater, and all the beautiful colors you can get, the blue, the yellow, the red, the clear, all of those are freshwater. And they range anywhere. You can get ghost shrimp, which are see-through, which is so cool. You get to see all the organs inside of them. They're really awesome. All of those, they range anywhere from 1/2 inch to some of them can even get up to 1.5 inches. I've heard that they can get up to 2 inch, some of the species. So there's a huge variety out there. They're super fun. And I do recommend these as pets if you're into them because they're just so fun to watch.
Awesome. Well, while we are swapping out to our next animal, I will share just a couple fun facts. This might be something you want to take a screenshot of on your computer or with your phone. Just the information about Boston, our cherry shrimp. And then Liz and Corey can let me know when we're ready for our second live guest today. A really cute picture of this little shrimp too. It kind of makes me want to get an aquarium.
All right, I think we are just about ready. So our next animal, like Corey said, our title today kind of gave away our animals. So our next one is going to be the snake, but you guys don't know exactly what kind of snake it's going to be yet. So Corey is going to turn on the camera when she gets a free hand. The snake is kind of a handful, so once she is able to get the camera on, she will. This is actually a really cool snake that is usually on exhibit here at the museum. So he often doesn't come out to see people for presentations. So this snake is called a black rat snake, and it is actually a native New England snake. A lot of times that surprises people. They're surprised that we have a snake this large in the New England area. Now, black rat snakes are the largest New England snake. That probably doesn't surprise you since the snakes, at least I tend to see in the wild out here, are usually pretty small. Now, black rat snakes are known to get upwards of 6 feet in length. Record for this species is actually 8 feet in length. So they can get really, really big. They tend to not be really heavy bodied. So this is pretty much the thickest that you will see a black rat snake. But you can see he is pretty impressive. And this particular individual is probably somewhere between 5 and 6 feet in length. Now, we do actually have several different snake species here in New England. The ones I tend to see most common are garter snakes. They are pretty common snakes. They are very dark in color and have long yellow stripes along the sides of their body. Black rat snakes, while they are native to Massachusetts, they're actually technically endangered in the state. There aren't too many areas where you will actually find black rat snakes. Connecticut River Valley in Massachusetts is pretty much where they're kind of isolated to. Now, black rat snakes are arboreal. That means they spend a lot of time up in trees. That's probably not that surprising because you guys can see he is doing quite a number, climbing all over Corey's hands and arms. She definitely has the harder job here today for our live animal presentation. Now, black rat snakes actually have some special features that make them great climbers. One of those features is actually their scale pattern. So black rat snakes have what are known as keeled scales. So each individual scale on this snake's body has a keel or a raised ridge. Corey's going to do the best job that she can. He's not cooperating very well, showing you one of those individual scales. That keel just gives a little extra grip, and it really does help many different kinds of climbing snakes. So they actually spend most of their time up in trees. Now, you might be wondering what a black rat snake eats. As the name suggests, they do tend to eat a lot of rats and rodents. They're also known to get small birds being up in those trees, eggs of other animals. So they're really not too picky. Snakes are always carnivores. So it's always going to be another animal that this snake is going to eat. Now, a lot of times when we take out a snake, one of the first questions is it venomous? The best clue that this is a non-venomous snake is that you're seeing Corey handle it. We never handle venomous snakes with our bare hands. So they are definitely a non-venomous snake. They are actually constrictors. A lot of you probably have heard that term before. Usually we think of boas, pythons when we think of constriction, but lots of different snakes are in fact constrictors, including all rat snakes. So they have no venom. Again, they just use that constriction to kill their prey. Now, another observation some of you may have been making, you've probably been seeing our snake, I know he's moving quite a bit, you've probably been seeing him stick his tongue out. That's actually how snakes are able to pick up scent molecules. So their tongue helps them smell. So every time he's flicking that tongue out, wow, that was a really great close-up of it. He's collecting little scent molecules, and then he's bringing those molecules to the roof of his mouth, where he has something called a Jacobson's organ. This is telling his brain what he's smelling. So he typically lives on exhibit here at the museum. He has never been in this room before. So he's probably picking up lots of really interesting scents. So I see we have a couple questions already. Why don't I turn it over to some of those?
Yes, lots of questions as well as lots of love. People have said how cute he is and how great the snakes are, which is always nice to hear.
That is nice to hear.
Yeah, because sometimes we know people are a little uncomfortable around snakes, but once you learn more about them, you realize what amazing animals they truly are. That's my personal opinion. So Leona, who is 10, asks, what type of adaptations does a black rat snake have and what makes them unique? So maybe just like your coolest adaptation?
I mean, honestly, I kind of already talked about it. I think one of the coolest things is their scales. The fact that they have those really cool keeled scales. So every single scale on this snake looks different than a lot of other snakes that just have smooth scales. So honestly, I think that is one of the coolest things. Snakes in general have a lot of adaptations. They're one of the few animals that can eat a full animal and digest it. So a lot of animals, for example, birds of prey, they might eat a full animal like a mouse or a rat, but they have to regurgitate the parts they can't digest. Snakes' stomachs are so strong, they're acids, that they can break down a full animal. So when you see snake poop, which I see a lot of since I take care of snakes here at the museum, you really can't even tell that it ever was a mouse or a rat, which is pretty awesome, I think. Some of you may think it's gross, but I think it's cool.
I mean, it's gross, but it's also really cool. And a question or two questions that we always get, I bet you can expect them. Siobhan, who's 9, wants to know what is his name. And lots of people have asked, how old is it? And does it have a name? Oh, I already said that one.
He absolutely does have a name. He actually came with the name. His name is Onyx. which I think is a really perfect name for him. And he is actually 15 years old. So he's actually getting older, although they are known to live 20, even a little bit older than 20 in captivity.
We also have lots of questions. Another one we usually get with snakes is, do they bite?
So we always say with animals, anything with a mouth can bite. Snakes usually don't bite for no reason. So they need to either be hungry and something smells like food and they get confused, or they try to defend themselves and then they might bite. But really, if you approach a snake in the wild, it's first going to try to get away. That's going to be the first thing a snake will try. And then if it does get cornered, it gets threatened, it gets nervous, it definitely might bite. So I bet you guys can imagine if you tried to grab a snake in the wild, it probably wouldn't behave like Onyx is right now, because he's used to being handled. So he doesn't see Corey as a threat. Although he's very active and being a little annoying for her, he's not being aggressive or anything like that. But definitely snakes in the wild would try to defend themselves.
All right, I think one last question about our snake, and this, I really like this one because it has a lot of thought in it. What is its habitat like at the museum as an arboreal snake? Does he have a tree to live in?
He actually does. That's a great question. Hopefully some of you are able to visit the museum one day and you'll get to see him in his exhibit. He lives in a habitat that we call take a closer look, because the animals tend to really blend in with their surroundings. And it is an artificial tree because we couldn't plant a tree in the museum. But he has a nice hole at the top of the tree that he likes to spend a lot of time, a lot of branches that he likes to climb. And he actually lives with 2 other animals. He lives with 2 box turtles. So it's a really great exhibit at the museum, and I hope many of you are able to see it someday.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing all the cool stuff about Onyx. And here again, if you guys want to take a screenshot or just, internalize all of those fun facts. I remember when I first learned about black rat snakes and learning that they lived here in New England and could climb trees. I started keeping an eye out when I was walking through the woods, more out of excitement in hopes that I could find a black rat snake in the trees above me. Some of you might be looking up above just to make sure there isn't a black rat snake there. There's lots of animals on your nature walks that are great at hiding. I encourage you, as our weather warms up, really getting out there and looking for some of our native species.
All right, I think we are ready for our last animal. Again, our title gave away most of our animals today. So we are finishing with the skunk. Now this animal hopefully behaves a lot better for Corey than the last one. This actually should work out really well because our skunk is just kind of moving around in a little exercise pen that we have her in. So I guess the only struggle will be trying to keep the camera on her. Now, more specifically, this is a species of skunk called a striped skunk. Now, striped skunks, there are hooded skunks, hognose skunks, spotted skunks, and those are the only kinds of skunks. So it's a pretty small family of animals. And one last animal belongs to the skunk family, and it's something cool called a stink badger, which I always think is just really fun. Now, a lot of times when people see the skunk, I'm hoping you guys think she is adorable because I think she's adorable, but a lot of times people don't like skunks. They just think of that awful smell. Usually everyone has some story about smelling a skunk at some point, and people just tend to not like them. Kind of like I was talking about with the snake, that it only bites if it feels threatened. Skunks only spray that smell when they feel threatened. So skunks will actually try to give warnings before they ever spray. So you'll notice our skunk is just kind of relaxing right now. She's moving around with it in this enclosure. She doesn't look on edge or nervous at all. But let's say that a skunk is out in the wild and a big animal that wants to eat it starts to come over to the skunk. The first thing a skunk is going to do for a warning, it's going to fluff up its fur and kind of make itself look bigger. So they're saying, go away, I'm a tough skunk. If that doesn't work, whatever's coming after the skunk is still coming after it, The next thing the skunk will do is they'll actually charge forward a little bit and they'll stomp their front feet. Then they might back up, stomp again, charge forward and stomp. And I will tell you, they look pretty cute when they do it, but they're still trying to say, I'm big and tough, go away. If that doesn't work, whatever's coming after the skunk is still coming after it. The next thing they will do, skunks are quite flexible and they will curve their body so it's in kind of a U shape. So that means the head of the skunk and the rear end of the skunk are looking at this animal at the same time. Now, this is a skunk that is getting ready to spray. And the reason it's looking is because it is aiming. Now, skunks can aim their spray pretty accurately, 12 to about 15 feet. Now, usually they're aiming for the face of the animal, in particular the eyes, which might sound kind of mean, but if you're a skunk and you're going to get turned into someone's dinner, you need to defend yourself in some way. Now, it's not going to blind an animal forever, but it is going to sting, it is going to hurt, it is going to startle the animal. So hopefully the skunk has a chance to get away. Now, skunks do have a couple predators, but honestly, that spray does really well, and skunks are able to defend themselves pretty well. Their number one predator is actually a bird called a great horned owl. Great horned owls have really poor senses of smell, so often they stink like skunks and they honestly don't care. But other than that, you can find some pretty funny YouTube videos of skunks chasing down bears and really big animals because of that spray that they have. Now, I know we're kind of running out of time, so why don't I turn it over to questions about our skunk?
Excellent. Well, if people are interested, if we run a few minutes over, I think that's fine. We have lots of great questions about our animals today. So again, questions we always get: how old is this skunk? What is her name? And what is their lifespan?
The name of this skunk is Penelope, and we actually did a little bit of research to come up with that name. I don't know, some of you might be too young to remember Pepe Le Pew cartoons, who was a pretty famous skunk that I remember when I was a kid. And there is a cat that he often likes to kind of go after in the cartoons, and the name of the cat was Penelope. So we did do research to come up with that, which I think is a pretty adorable name for her. Now, she is actually 9 years old, so she's getting older for a skunk. They often can live 10, a little bit longer in captivity. They probably would not live this long out in the wild. So she's definitely an older skunk, but I think she's still doing quite well.
Lots of people are asking about the colors. So why are they black and white? Why do they have the white stripe on their back?
That's a good question. So what's kind of cool, they call it the striped skunk because it does look pretty much like a stripe down their back, but the striping pattern is individual to each skunk. So it's kind of like a fingerprint. So even siblings would have slightly different striping pattern. Now that stripe, that bright white, is made to stand out. Skunks tend to be nocturnal or active mostly at nighttime in the wild. So animals that tend to also be active at that time often don't see great color. So they might not have the best color vision, but what's really going to stand out is that bright white, especially against the black. So skunks want to be noticed. They want other animals to see them and avoid them. Because again, they don't want to spray. They just will if they need to defend themselves.
So what kind of animals are their predators that try to eat them or successfully eat them?
Yeah, so definitely pretty much any bigger animal, any bigger mammal will maybe go after a skunk, maybe once, and then kind of learn their lesson. So mountain lions, bobcats, I mentioned bears, that you will see bears getting chased off by skunks in some funny YouTube videos, but they still may go after them. Coyotes. So pretty much any big mammal like that is a potential predator of a skunk. Their best predators are going to be ones from the sky. So those birds, one, they can startle the skunk a little bit better coming from above. So great horned owls are going to be their number one predator. But maybe hawks would also be one that would potentially go after a skunk. Now, baby skunks are pretty small, so you could even have a large snake potentially go after a newborn baby skunk. So those would be potential predators. But again, the spray does pretty well.
So we'll round it out since we just learned what eats them. What do skunks eat?
You actually have seen our skunk eat a couple things while she's been on the camera. Some of them were actually live things that she was eating, superworms. So superworms are larvae of beetles, and skunks in the wild eat lots of grubs. So they are known for digging up people's lawns and finding those grubs or other little insects. So that's going to be one of their most favorite things. Here at the museum, she actually also eats a couple different kinds of pet food. She eats dog food and cat food. They are known to find those things. So we recommend not leaving pet food outside because it will attract skunks. But they are technically omnivores, so they'll eat fruits, vegetables that they find. Insects is definitely going to be a favorite food item.
Excellent. I always love at this time of year looking for those little dug up patches in my lawn as the skunks start making their reappearance here in New England. I like seeing evidence of them around or smelling the evidence because it tells me spring is coming. But I want Liz and Corey to say thank you, give a wave. Thank you, Penelope and Austin and Onyx for joining us today as well. Let me share my screen, and we have a couple of skunk facts as we wrap up here. Again, if you want to take like a screenshot of that, so that was Penelope, our striped skunk. And I hope you guys had fun today. It was great. We had a really good audience. You had lots of great questions. Apologies if we did not get to all of your questions today. But I hope you enjoyed it and you might join us next time if you want to know more of what we're doing for these live streams and other sort of MOS at home activities. You can check out our website. And if you're able to do so, we always appreciate if you're willing to support the work that we're doing here at the Museum of Science. So I want to thank you guys again. Have a great rest of your Friday and we'll see you next time.